having a completely immersive experience in the real world with AR, because it's VR is cool. AR is play. AR gets to play in the real world. So.
Well, one of my hopes of just to be completely transparent when one has an agenda is that all these crazy ideas that I think are like really worth the experiments, like Amore suits that people have, like really could like find their way into upgrades and actually have teams work on them. So,
Yeah.
Something tells me that's going to happen.
Actually, an incubator for great ideas and for companies. Gather experts in the field and create a game out of it, and then fractal it out into a global game with including AR and immersive experiences and spaces. Like, there's so many malls that are just empty right now.
But the key is that the creation has to belong to the commons. So the funding has to be about bringing people together to share ideas in the old scientific research model, which has now crumbled into dust, which is really creating things for the public good and putting them into the commons.
Well, that's one of the things that I think is so on point. That's like a core piece. The Up game was born into the Planetary Commons. It has no owner. It's ultimately, our intention is it's going to be like a DAO engine. Like each one of the games could create any number of DAOs. That then imagine if you flipped OEM marketing, like multi-level MLM marketing, multi-level marketing. You flipped it from a pyramid going up to an inverse pyramid. And you create financial incentives for each one of these games to incent those that have participated to pursue all the way to execution. It's kind of like a flywheel for the Planetary Commons. Like I love thinking of it as a Commonwealth engine. Like, how do we create something that is so effective that it proves that cooperative advantage outperforms competitive advantage, and through its own effectiveness brings more and more of the current private sector world into the commons. So when we go and say, like, actually, you know what, Unilever would be a really useful supply chain to have in the Planetary Commons, why don't we just buy Unilever and like bring that in through the game? And so there's like, when that commons can become like a really significant size, where instead of being backed by gold, it's backed by land, protected land.
Yeah.
And so that's the currency of stars, is it's protecting like Gaia. It's like connected.
Yeah, what's so important about that is that what's happened with the internet is that artists and creative people have had to cannibalize themselves in order to get access to the system, instead of being paid and rewarded for their work, which is the work that generates the system to such an extent. And so this game turns it around by rewarding people who play the game for playing it, and thereby valuing and incentivizing people to bring their creativity into the commons in a different way. And I think that's so vital, because most people don't really realize how the system that we've created around creativity in the society it's creativity cannibalizing itself. And we have been asking for the last 25 years people to sacrifice themselves to this private system, in essence.
Right. Art and culture it's the most important. It's the inspiration, imagination, and wonder of our culture. How are we not rewarding that to the highest degree? That's really
we reward the people who are the transporters,
right?
Yeah. We reward the owners of the vehicles, you know.
One of the core tenets of the game is that in giving we receive. In all facets, right? Positivity begets positivity. And so it's like this premise of Aini, like reciprocity, essentially. And so I think one of the keys here will be like how we can design communities to work together, because it's an incentives problem, you know, at the end of the day. It's like, and incentives aren't just money, you know, they're like, incentives are kind of, they go all the way up to human psychology and belonging and meaning and purpose and all of those things. And so the more we can understand ways to incentivize like cooperation, that's where we're going to do like really deep systemic change. Because you know, I have confidence that this is actually like the way things are going to be in the future. Because if you take a longer view of history and look at the 200,000 years of human civilization and all the different versions of civilizations, like consistently, the way we organized ourselves was through communities, mostly through the Dunbar number. Like throughout society, it wasn't really until Descartes that we created the cult of the individual and we started to prioritize the individual over, and that's where we had Protestant Christianity, etc. And we've got really drunk on it. And so like as a like, okay, the pendulum's gone to peak individualism, peak capitalism. Let's flip that pendulum with as much velocity as we possibly can to the opposite side, knowing that there's like historic resonance there, knowing history is on our side as well as the future. Because when we can see this, we've organized ourselves in such a way for like 99% of human society until the Industrial Revolution, where we created all these obscure incentives to do the opposite. With great value to all sorts of, you know, not denying that we've made progress. But if now the intention is to go and say, like, how do we return to community? This is a deep incentives design challenge. And ultimately, that's what the game is about. Is like, how do we experiment rapidly with community incentive design so that we can get to that core fractal resonance, so that basically we can like scale that to as many people as possible. And I think that's like a question for all of us, is like, how do we get to that? Where is it? And like, we can start in the small with 22 people each week. But when we get that resonance, that's where we can see that there's, you know, and that's something I think that we're all pursuing.
Completely. I a ho to all of that, echo and a ho to all of that. And I love how we create in parallel so beautifully. May have some avenues for testing.
Very experimental positions.
Yeah. So let's chat about that, because that's happening this week. There may be some really awesome avenues for implementation.
Yeah.
That we can do right now.
After all this foreplay together, we need to have some orgasms, which are execution.
Amen.
Absolutely.
So guys, I need to jump off the call. I want to make sure Dawn has not been getting the emails. I created the spreadsheet to have the emails of everybody who's playing now. So let's make sure that Dawn's on the emails and use that spreadsheet to make sure.
Okay.
This is the boring stuff of making community happen, but it's essential. Okay. So let's make sure she gets the emails. And
I'll add her.
She's in the spreadsheet. So if you go into the spreadsheet and make sure that that's accurate, anytime anybody needs to send an email, you just copy that list and you paste it in, and then it makes it super simple for anybody who's in the group to want to communicate with each other instead of having an endless email chain going around, which becomes a mess. So
thank you so much, Sarah, for being on point with that. And we'll sync up about the online platform as well.
Yeah, that sounds good.
Thank you.
Wonderful to be with all of you.
Yeah, likewise. Thank you, Sarah.
Yeah, we'll talk later. Enjoy the rest of your afternoon.
Will do.
You guys can make it tonight.
I'll see you tonight, David.
Okay.
And David, any thoughts?
Brilliant.
Any words of wisdom from the Grand Wizard?
And goddess.
Perfect. That's definitely got some resonant wisdom.
I could use some help getting the meeting set up on Facebook tonight. I haven't done that before.
Oh, so are you doing it in Zoom? Yes, you are.
Yes.
So you go into your Zoom settings and you log in, you go down to the settings, and it's in advanced settings. Down there, it's called it's called share on, and you click 3 boxes. It's got FB Live, Facebook Live, YouTube, and other channels.
Okay.
And to click the Facebook, and then you'll log in, it'll connect onto your account, and then you want to log out of your Zoom and log back in, and then you can stream to Facebook.
Okay, and it does it automatically when you just do the meeting?
No, when you start the meeting, I
After,
recommend you press record first.
uh-huh,
Then go to down on the bottom left. It's got 3 dots. Oh, sorry, on the bottom right, it's got 3 dots that says more, and that's where you click go live on Facebook.
okay,
Once
cool, simple
you
enough.
actually have to press it, and then you'll want to give yourself a little time because you can put a title on Facebook, and then if you get yourself organized, you can tag everybody that's speaking or attending, and they get notifications and they can do watch parties.
Okay, cool.
So one invitation that I'm going to send out for tomorrow is that we're going to link the Facebook Live tomorrow to the Unified Planet Facebook page.
Mhm.
And people can go there and click and create a watch party. And that way, yesterday we'd had about 450 people watch our conversation.
Mhm, cool.
Today, I don't know yet. It's probably going to be similar. But if we all do a watch party, these like actually creates an interesting show of like watching the game from our social channels.
So the key is tagging as many people that you know are going to be there.
Yeah, and then creating kind of group watch parties.
Okay.
And then once we're partnering with all these festivals. So we're doing a festival week after next, which has got a reach of 20 million people across all of their networks. And they're partnered with like tons of festivals, from Lucidity to Bali Spirit Fest to like all these festivals around the world have all come together to create One Earth Live. And they've given us, it's a huge honor because of what we did with the Unified Planet Festival, where we launched the Up Game on Earth Day. Because of that, they've given us a 8-hour slot where we're delivering the live content. So it's really weird because it's called One Earth Live, except we're the only ones doing the live bit. But so we're going to be doing things like interviewing Nako, and interviewing like Isla Nerio. And so what we wanted to do was bring together some segments there where we bring all of the Up games that have been played so far. So we'll have a segment on sound for health, and then next week our Up game is on food for health, and the following week it's on community for health, and then the following week it's on neuroscience for health. And it kind of goes, we picked the next 8 topics, and then we'll move from health onto another, like probably systems change. But the intention here is that by the end of the week we can have like as broad audience as possible to bring people into these virtual spaces to continue the conversation and like continue playing like through this deeply immersive game. But you know, it's very early on.
Could also feed the Medical Sound Association meetings as well, really well. Also, Maren, talking about AR, I've got a whole virtual reality system I've been working on for years where you can put on a VR helmet, you can see inside your body.
Yes.
And then you can take a sound or geometry, sacred geometry, and drop it in any organ, and it will move the sound up and down on a sound table or vest so you can feel it. And so I came up with a whole game in detail where you could actually, the whole point of the game is to track down either your friend or family's disease or issue, or your own, and figure out the different ways, which, you know, could be exploding it, or just resonating love and light, or just all the different ways you can use sound. And in the game, as you do different things and listen closely, you get different tools to actually track down and heal yourself.
Yes.
David, it's amazing. David, where are you with that project?
Well, I've got it detailed out because we actually had a funder quite a few years ago. So we have spreadsheets and everything in detail. And, you know, I mean, we've got one of the top sacred geometry instructors in the world teaching for us. So we've got all the geometries and what they do for different organs. Of course, we got all the frequencies that we can use when we put them in. We've also partnered with Nutra Energetics, who has that pad that you put your hand on and it sends quantum energy through the body and pings each organ to give you a 30-page medical readout. So we can use that and our voice analysis system as an assessment to have the sounds and visuals automatically go inside the body right where you need them. And then you can also hook up feedback devices to your hand, right? or do EKG or EEG. And then I've come up with an algorithm for figuring out what sounds and frequencies and music you need based on your physiological parameters. So that could be tied into the whole system. So even if it didn't work, it would be so much fun.
It's really, that resonates. It's very true and valid. That's amazing. Love it so much. To be continued. That's a whole, like, yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And thank you so much for creating that. So that's just
so cool, David.
Thank you all.
so cool.
Yeah, so cool. Well,
fun.
Yeah, we're gonna send a picture of this magic.
Yes.
And each day we get a piece of art that
I
comes
love
out.
it.
Love.
It's so fun watching her create it.
Okay. This is really serious.
Okay.
And then no, and then art series and all of it. I think that might be it. I think that's a thing.
I think we should do an up game on arts for health.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Mm.
I mean, this all goes hand in hand.
Sorry.
All of it, the constellation.
Yeah.
Mm.
Say that, Bobby, again.
Well, it all goes hand in hand. All of this, it's the constellation, you know. It's how we weave that with the mycelium between all of these games that you're doing. That is of real interest to me.
That's you just hit the nail on the head, Bobby. Hit the nail on the head.
Got us.
You busted us.
You, Bobby.
I know that's your plan. I just don't know if it's everybody else's understanding.
Well, that's the thing. It's like I think
we are.
Part of like what's a good practice in magic is you actually say what you're going to do before you do it, and the whole intention, right? It's like the whole intention of performing magic as a collective is like, how do you invite the collective to say what they're going to do before they're going to do it? And so we're just like, we do that as a collective, maybe we'll be like literally collectively spelling the future. And so part of the point of the 2030 immersion that we're going to do as we finish this out is invite people to speak as themselves from the future about these 8 uploads that exist. And so what we're going to do as the Savannah House team, which we're going to have so much fun, is we're developing our 2030 characters, and they show up every week. And for each one of the memes that we've come up with as like in that week's game, we're going to act out kind of a skit as our future selves about like how that like changed the world. And so each week people can watch a show of like, this is how sounds change society. And we synthesize and we try and do it in a funny way that will bring, and we've, you know, there's a house of characters here. So expect to dress and all sorts of stuff. We'll get weird. And so each week we're actually trying to create content that will like really shine a light on that kind of, you know, make it play and light of something actually really serious so that more and more people are drawn to it. because that feels like one of the best ways we can like make the game like participatory and fun, and like characters where we're inviting other players to step into their 2030 character also. And it becomes like something that we can do when we go into game fields, which are kind of going to be public spaces, and we come together to play the game. We can all collectively step into our future selves as a practice. Could be like really powerful thing to use a game, you know,
like
to
2030 cosplay.
Sorry.
Like 2030 cosplay.
Exactly.
Cool.
And 2030 murder mystery.
Big
2030, there's going to be all sorts. We're going to create all sorts of themes around like, this is the, you know, we've got I mean, we've got the whole of Burning Man, right? So
Captive audience.
like the Omniverse.
You got nowhere to go.
Serious capital into making the Omniverse the best place on the internet. We're going to cap it. That with the maximum number of players in the Omniverse is 144,000 people. And we're going to bring people. So you have to get a ticket to the Omniverse, and we're going to make a whole joke out of like, you know, Jehovah's Witnesses, but it's actually kind of serious because it's and we're going to say like, okay,
Hey, don't go joking about those Jehovah's, man.
No, not joke, just like the 144.
No, I'm kidding. They do good cookie.
In the Book of Revelation, it's kind of an important number. So I don't know, the number of people that are so talented in our community have basically, my assessment of our like collective Burning Man community is we're like way better at playing together than we are working together. So like, you know, I've noticed that, and I used to get frustrated with that. I was like, wait, why have we got so many people talking about systems change, but they can't get the fucking act together to work together on this like giant planetary effort that's going to take all of us? And I was like thinking, going like, what's the solution to that? What's the solution? Obviously, obviously a pandemic is kind of helpful, us coming together in a new way. But in addition, it's like, oh, that observation that we're way better at playing together than we are working together. Well, what if we just turn the whole thing into a play? Like that was just so much better. Like, you know, we said at the weekend that at the up game, we only play together 8 hours a week. The rest of the time, we're having fun. Because we, you know, I do think we can actually transform the world in 8 hour a week commitments. And I would really love to invite that playing the game will quickly become almost like a civic, not just a civic duty, but duty in the truest sense of the word, in that this is something that you step into as like, this is my place where I apply my purpose for being born in this world, and my dharma. I apply that to reimagining the world I want to live in, starting from myself up to my community, etc. You know, that's
it.
Yeah.
That's it. And invite everyone to play. You know, I mean, I'm just Yeti's cool. You know, there are lots of cool things in the world that we can
Warrior. So good. Light Warrior, exactly.
Yeti, you can get customized mugs with whatever character you want.
Yeah, I love things like that, where it would be awesome for Yeti to accept stars, for example, and brands to start accepting stars and distributing, basically saying like, you know, it's like half price if you pay in stars, because like this has been received as a gift for your service to the collective. You know, so the more we can create a planetary honest currency, a currency that belongs to the planetary commons, that is a profound concept. That is like based on, and you get given it based on your service to the planetary commons. You know, I think that's the key. We've already got multiple properties being opened up that we could use as a way to like back this currency. Because Maya Kamis, the volcano, huge area of a sacred site that David Levy's been stewarding incredibly. He said he's totally in to bring the game, to bring that as like essentially a foundation currency. There's Savannah House here, so we've already agreed with the landlords that we can purchase this in a planetary commons. There's the places in Costa Rica that Stephen Brooks is stewarding, for example. There's like Ecovia, Punta Mona. There's places that could start to be part of this like co-op essentially of physical like real estate. And that real estate, there's like Ian Michael's got a project there. There's Doug our camp is Doug Evans has got an amazing spot with natural hot springs in Joshua Tree, huge area that could be brought by the collective. And multiple others. Another Joe Brewer's got a spot in Colombia that he's up for being part of this kind of network. The mushroom farm here, etc. And the thinking here is that if we can create a real estate fund that would be essentially the backing of stars.
Like a REIT.
The stars would become like the central bank is the planet herself. If that real estate fund, if we can start to bring those properties into the unified planet, which is a cooperative, the currency would have an engine for investors to go and say, actually, we're going to buy more and more land into the commons. And that once that happens, we can actually start to use completely transformative experiences as incentives for players of the up game. Because if you could take your stars and you could go and say, I'm going to go to the Disneyland of the next system, of the next civilization, which is actually built, in in nature, in the most immersive way, where you go into these like beautiful like domes, and it's totally the ancient future. There's like your theater, David, is like one of the experiences you have. And people come out and they've been doing breath work and all these transformative experiences, and they come out and they say they've never experienced anything like that in their lives. And that, like, they then go back to their communities. If we can create that kind of like mythic, like when you're a really good player of the game, i.e. you've had as high impact on your community as possible. Like to be a really good player, you have to be gifted all these stars from the people you play with. You receive stars as a gift. It's a currency. It's very different concepts to, really celebrates community. And so that's one intention is like, could we link the two? And so this game idea is way bigger than any company. It's like, how do we connect all these dots that are ready to be connected? And so that's where it's like, you need as much help as possible on like, what are the ways of like creating a fractal of a game design that could be, it's a worthy experiment to put some serious money behind. To go and say like, people at Buckminster Fuller said that the way to create the New World system is a New World game. And so people like that, it's like, how do we get serious money behind it so that every week, every one person that's contributing to this game is being given 1,000 stars. And they can choose with those stars who to give it to from that week's game or elsewhere or otherwise. So they could give it outside, they could give it to members, or you could keep it for yourself. So everybody earns that. That will create a way for us to create essentially a flywheel to the planetary commons, like an accelerator to the planetary commons. Because if we're incentivizing these ideas in service of the planetary commons, and we find a way of paying people from their very first contribution, it will be much easier to make sure people are paid at every step of the way, and people are rewarded for their contribution to society. Because we need to make heroes out of the people that are creating value for the commons. They need to be the wealthiest, not in terms of private jets and shit like that. You know, it's more the wealthiest in society should be those that create the highest impact for positive transformation on society.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. I've been saying, how do we flip what we currently value now, and how do we flip that to reward those that are actually having a net positive impact on the planet? And the one thing that we think about with good money is, you know, the key thing is actually the incentives that are along the lines of self-interest, you know, economic self-interest, but connecting to a better planet at the same time is probably the clearest shot we have. And so, you know, that encourages people to actually take action, you know, change habits, but also keep them and form them and keep them. And so that's the thing, they're the things I think about a lot. You know, we need to flip what we value and what we see as success. I mean, just because someone has a shit ton of money in their bank account, the question needs to be asked, how was that made? You know, how is that bank account full? You know, with what, in what way did that come about? You know, they're the questions we're not asking. And how we herald people that have got fat wallets, but it's what damage did they do to society en route to making that? You know, these are the questions that need to be become clearer and asked. No more pink elephants in any room anywhere. It's just like, let's just put, you know, actually, you know, we were talking about this last night, Maren. It's like, how do we actually connect these dots in ways we've never done before? And I think the timing's right. And Lucian, we haven't talked about this, but, you know, with the stuff that I've been thinking about lately is how we break the spell and cast a new one. And there's a lot of amazing things going on with witches right now, you know, that needs to be brought to bear as well. So, and supported.
I have to go. See you guys.
Yeah.
See you tonight,
you.
David.
Thank you.
David.
Bye.
So much. Thank you.
Delayed.
See ya.
Thank you.
Mm.
See you soon. I hope, Bobby.
Brilliant,
Yes.
Bobby. Thank you.
Yes.
Yeah. It's
and that's really also to the point about what are the engines. Like, I've been thinking a lot about what are the entry points, and then what are the financial engines that we can implement. And with ICV really taking an impact investment approach to philanthropy to solve global challenges, not just put some money towards them, but solve them. Take a holistic approach and get experts in the fields together, very similar to what you're doing. It's who are the experts in the field? Okay, great. Come together and co-create a solution, and then let's implement it. And then with people who are investing in innovation, taking 10%, giving 10% to philanthropy, and just having that be the norm.
totally.
And just co-creating solutions together, and having that be in the DNA of what's actually being created. And the
Yeah, and I'd like to suggest that 10% isn't necessarily just for philanthropy. I know you're probably not thinking that either, but you know, that money has to actually go into early stage catalyzation of ideas and concepts, and the first lost capital, you know, because philanthropy is broke. You know, the current system of where we put our money and how we use it is broken, and philanthropy plays a huge role in perpetuating the challenges that we have around that. So, you know, we're on the same plane, Mara, and I'm just making that clear that I don't think the old ways of doing things are working, and that feels to me and like an older systems approach. But yeah, I think the three of us can catalyze more around that very thing. I think I'm really interested in the thinking around the game and the incision point, and what you've talked about in terms of how people don't necessarily work well together, but they do play well together. And I like that framing. And, you know, we'll probably get more shit done this way, as just because we're naming it as a playful thing rather than a, you know, we've got to get this done now kind of thing. And so, you know, so the entry point I feel like is there. And then exactly what you said, Maren, in terms of what are the financial engines? I mean, this is the sort of stuff I think about you know, all day long in my sleep,
Yeah.
you know.
This is what we do.
So,
So we
how do we actually do this?
Yeah.
And right now we have the biggest opportunity of our lifetimes, and probably, you know, of centuries to actually change things up. And like I was saying to you last night, I think this could go either way. We could slip back into the older ways of doing things, and, you know, like we were talking about last night, people wanted to go back to normal, but normal didn't work. Well, normal wasn't good enough. It's like, why would we ever want to go back to normal? What does that even mean anymore? You know, these big questions of normal. So yeah, so I've been in listening mode for the last few days, and I'll probably continue to be, but synthesizing in my own neural network about how to connect the dots here. But there's just so much to be said, and you know, you're talking about 8 different those subsets, and I love them all. I don't know how to choose between any of them, and how we cross-pollinate across that, and then across this whole constellation of games that you're doing. That's the sort of stuff that feeds me at a really deep level.
Well, Bobby, I would love to invite you, Maren. The people that are coming together they feel the charm of the invitation. I'd love to invite you to be, I think we're going to call each other founding players, like a kind of founding circle of people that will be like really putting deep thought into the kind of architecture of the game. You know, this is something I've kind of obsessed over. And in my own like weird ways of like, you know, I've obsessed over really nothing else for the last 3 years of like trying to think from a big picture about like what is the things that could connect and create something that would like engage, be something that without the center is kind of all of it, if that makes sense, like the true planetary game. And I've been like looking for others, being like, who's got it? Like, is anyone else like where is it? Because I ain't seeing it. Like, I haven't seen something. You know, it's like Burning Man community could be so much more effective together. You know.
Oh, without doubt. And I think the biggest opportunity with the Burning Man community is the fact that there isn't, you know, the one thing that came up for me when they postponed it, and I think it's beyond COVID-19 that they did that. They were having issues with the Bureau of Land Management out at Black Rock City anyway. I think that was going to be problematic for this year. But the one thing my instantaneous reaction was, so people are heartbroken that it's not going to happen. It's like, Burning Man is not a geographic location. It's not a specific time of year. It's 10 principles that we need to bring to, you know, in our everyday lives, every moment. And there couldn't be more relevant time for that, you know. So like you said, people in the Burning Man community don't necessarily work well together. I work well with people that are in the Burning Man community, you know, but I've seen others that find it harder to do that. But you've nailed it with this play, you know, because burners like play. But if they can truly embody the principles of, you know, self-reliance and resiliency and all the things that Burning Man is about in their daily practice, then they're burners. To go out to a place once a year to one geographic location for 5 days doesn't make you a burner. It makes you someone that goes to somewhere and thinks there's something, but it's not actually the case. And you know what Shane was saying before about authenticity and the way people show up and what you embody, that's the only language that works right now. It truly is. It's this speed of trust, and it comes from an authentic, genuine, how people are showing up. And this is what people are going to value as true leaders going forward. That's just really clear to me. I've never been clearer in my life about that.
Love it, Bobby. I so wholeheartedly agree with you.
So great.
And I think the you know, one of the things I think there's an opportunity for us to kind of really think about how do we co-create this together as a culture is like, you know, what is it to have like civic duty in a kind of game where it can turn into a play. And what, you know, one of the things is like these like ancient ideas around tithing that have existed in religions. And so, we were talking, Marin, about the 10% earlier. And so one of the, game rule number 9 is that 10% of all transactions that happen inside the game go into the into essentially the planetary commons.
Yeah,
to a
that's
fund.
what we have at ICP.
Exactly. So it's like, and by the way, the game is made up of all these other organizations that want to be playing these new games together. So ICV can become a founding member of the game, like a founding player. As an organization, you could actually like bring, that's the whole idea of how we can propagate this, is like bring organizations into this methodology and like invite them in to take the oath, the Unified Planet Oath, which I think is going to be a really important thing, that we're inviting people to step into honor. But the thinking is, if 10% of those transactions, so that every time stars are given, 10% goes into automatically, because it's all digital, 10% will go into a commons fund. What we can then do is start to create like community commons, so that each commons fund is a fractal of the particular community, particular geographic community. That can like bring more like essentially sovereignty to local communities, was the thinking here.
Exactly. Sovereign.
Yeah, like it's kind of like an engine to financially empower communities, because right now, I've studied communities for 12 years, and right now, like, it's impossible for a community to be financially empowered without becoming something that it's not.
Yeah.
They have to incorporate as a company. And so we don't have the means. We've almost like cut at the knees the most ancient way of organizing. And so the question we've got is like, how can we financially empower communities without requiring them to enroll in like becoming incorporated and board of directors and all of that kind of thing, but rather that they form these DAOs that financially empower them and says, okay, we're going to commit to this challenge based on this update. And we're going to play a game towards us achieving this, and we're going to get funded along the way. And an investor can go and take 50% to go and say, okay, if we as a community hit this particular challenge, an investor can get 50% of the value, and community get 50% of the value, and it's then like invested back into this cycle. Like, like the
regenerative financial model.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So all
Completely.
We're at the point right now where we can be building them into the game. And like, we have this beautiful flywheel where we can test them on really small groups of people.
Yes.
You see,
and you're an incubator for the ideas as well, because that's with ICV, we call it catalytic philanthropy. So to differentiate between the old model of philanthropy, it's designed to specifically solve challenges. And so it's about who are the experts on the ground, really empowering local communities, listening from local communities, what is needed, and really working with communities instead of having this top-down approach. We go in and say who's here and who can we collaborate with. So a collaborative approach. And then essentially all of the funds, all of the catalytic philanthropy funds at ICV are essentially they belong, because they're essentially community owned, because all the proceeds from the investments go into them. So it's creating that. So it's so beautiful to see that this is all in our collective field, and that we're all tapped into this channel of this is the model. Like, this is the model that resonates both on the grassroots community level and also on an institutional banking level. It's like, how are we, and then where we can come in is how are we co-creating? How are we rainbow bridging the two communities? Like, how are we bridging these communities of wealth and inviting them to play? And how are we empowering also people who are in and just bringing tools with us. So when we're working with communities that we're going in to say, hey, here are some tools, and bridging and creating that connectivity. Where people have access to education, they have access to impact, like how to invest, how to implement, like how you're farming, great, like have this whole here's a library of tools of all of these videos, all of these things and resources, and just creating digital, whether it's a digital identity, a key, it's essentially keys. How many keys, how many stars, how many gifts of joy, how many like heart emojis are we creating in communities, and just showering all of that everywhere, and creating that connective, that ability, that practical connectivity between all members too, so that each member is sovereign in their identity and has the ability to belong to all these different communities, and can collect stars, can collect keys, can collect all of these things that they collect, hearts, all of these things that they, and be rewarded for what they do in the world.
Well, Maren, this is a really specific ask, actually, that I would love your support with. And Bobby, you may be able to support as well. It's really important that we kind of get this off and the way we want to go forward. You know, even though we like raced and we're still kind of responding real time to designing that, I think it's really important that we get it right. And one thing I would love to invite, and we're working on this here, but both of you have got deep connections here, is by Thursday, I would have loved to raise $30,000 to basically back the first 30,000 stars that will then get distributed to everybody that participated in this week's game. And each person then gets to distribute who they would like to give it to, or keep it for themselves, and that's perfectly like a perfectly acceptable thing to do. And we just create a measure of like how many stars you've earned and how many stars you've been given as well, is like two measures people have in the game. But I would love to raise the first 30K basically, and I'm speaking to a number of people to try and actually raise more than that, because it would, but just from one organization, whether it might be, for example, an invitation. I'm speaking to Robert tomorrow, an invitation for Robert and ICV to become a founding member, a founding player of the game, ultimately, which is going to become a participant in the co-op, the Swiss Genossenschaft that this will create. But the ICV could, for example, put back the first 30K of stars, because I think we want to make sure that the first stars are backed in a kind of mythically coherent way. So if you get my meaning.
Yes, absolutely. And I'm so happy you're speaking with Robert tomorrow. It's providential timing. That's perfect. And I also wanted to bring this idea into the field. Bobby and I are part of a coalition with Next Gen Giving and Next Gen Generosity. And so I'm wondering if this could be an excellent, also a initiative to highlight, and to also support with the Giving Tuesday. On Sunday we took over Giving Tuesday's Instagram, and Olivia and Chelsea were just rock stars, just highlighting all of this amazing work in the world. And it's getting a lot of traction as well, and it's highlighting acts of giving and Next Gen Philanthropy, and it's bringing everyone in around this idea. So I'm wondering if we can, because we're doing this for the next couple of weeks, and highlighting this. So I think it could be also a really cool. It could be a really cool way to just have continuous amplification of good work and invite people into play.
How about this? If I create a Facebook Giving Tuesday Savannah fundraiser through the Savannah Foundation, is essentially like currently the fiscal sponsor to be able to financially remunerate their contribution here, and we set that up with like when we incorporated the foundation 2 days ago yesterday, we set up with like pillars of like how it's designed. So Mana Foundation can fund this. And so one thing we could do is we set up a Facebook fundraiser for Sound and Health and say that we're looking to raise $30,000 by basically by Friday, say. If you could share that with the group, that would be really powerful, because I think we're all in agreement here that, Bobby, what I think it was,
common stars.
Yeah, come and be part of the inaugural. It's like a cool invitation.
Yeah, it is.
30,000, and by the way, we could definitely do with more than 30,000. So, but this is just a bit. So let's just start there. But like
333,000
to be among the inaugural 30,000 people to back stars.
Yes.
Kind of cool thing, right?
Yes, I love it. And then you get stars. You donate and you get stars, and then boom, it launches.
Yeah.
Yeah. Why not? There, pourquoi pas? It's so fun. and just having the
fastest launched currency. I mean, I have been thinking about this for a long time, but it's like, it's actually it's more of a like game credit.
Yeah, it is. It's buying it. It's donating, and you're donating into the game, and you're now a participating member of the game. So come play.
And we actually only need to, the beauty of the way we've structured this is that we can raise money philanthropically, but we can also raise investment. So once we create the Genossenschaft, people's investment can be both. So we can channel like through both routes depending on what people are doing, which is really, really interesting.
I think engagement with the community. So it's for brand sponsors, anyone who is interested in accessing the attention of this community. It's creating that community and then creating the engagement around it, and saying we have this base of 30,000, 40,000, 50,000 people who are focused on next gen giving and philanthropy, and who want to play together, who are in to play together. So.
Well, you know how Joshua was speaking to, Joshua spoke to this, but and I think Bobby, you raised it earlier as well today, which is looking at the source of people's money. You know, you were speaking about that, and like how people made their money is an important question to ask, is like the new spelling. And one thing that I think the three of us are all in a lot of agreement on here is it's not just how did you, but it's how did your inheritance as well. Because one thing I'm pretty sure about is that the story isn't just being played out in our lifetime. This story has been being played out since like biblical times and even beyond. Storyline characters is family lines.
Yeah.
I know this from recognizing the music of my own family. Like music goes off in different frequencies, and there's almost like you can see the storyline going through this like bullwhip of history through your particular family experiences and what role families have played in the kind of the cosmic periscope. And so one thing, I've been seeing is that it's not random that I'm like the 7th generation grandson of John Jacob Astor, who's like, rumored to be the father of the Illuminati and was the first billionaire in America. It's deeply connected to like how I feel what is my expression of service to this moment. And like it's that sound of our ancestors that if we can translate that for as many people as possible, and we invoke that remembrance and that responsibility as a noble act, I think there's a lot of next gen families that are like part of that, $60 trillion, $70 trillion that is transitioning from one generation to the next. So part of like what it is to be responsible with inheritance is to recognize the energetics of how that money was created, and do your best to like, how do we, any negative, any externalities of your family lineage, what if you were to take those on as your like, service, and, and you were to do this like ancestral, you know, Aikido move
Yeah.
in the, and say that like actually,
Lots.
yeah, it's like, and recognizing that it's not random. You know, it's like what the talk I gave at the Family Office Association in Martha's Vineyard.
This vineyard, the magical cat.
It was titled, right, exactly, like
David
from
and
family
Sophia.
Dharma to planetary Dharma. And so one invitation here would be like, what if playing the game could connect to your ancestral journey? And part of the thing that we could do together, and the three of us and many more that are seeing this aspect of it, is we could bring like next gen, you know, our next gen friends that are inheriting wealth, and bring them on this ancestral journey through a game where we help them find what is their dharma in the world and how do they want to use their capital to have the greatest effect on the game. And that might be a really like, that would be a really cool strategy for fundraising for the game, is like helping like people connect to their ancestral roots, direct that capital in a way that like says, I'm not going to be waiting for the pitchforks to come. I'm going to like, I'm going to be leading the pack. And it's like not random that the Rockefellers are suing Big Oil. It's not random. These are not random things.
I love Chris.
That ancestor's story is a story, and it's playing out whether you like it or not.
Yeah, it's so true, and it's also it's fun. I mean, for me in my journey, it's been really fun and opening and just awesome. Like as I recognized where I come from, and I got very clear and about where I come from, and also the awesomeness of my ancestors and the good intentions and everything that was well intended, and then the ability to have agency to say, okay, I get to play with my friends, and I get to, while doing that and while acting and while just living in joy, really, I live in a constant state of joie de vivre. And so
yes, you are.
And so to create that, to go from like personally, I felt like my family history was on one side was in locks. And so I felt it on a cellular level. And then my journey with sound and dance and healing has been really going from unlocking myself. And then by unlocking myself through sound and dance and all of these somatic movements that are ancient, this is how we as civilization have processed trauma and have processed everything. And then that unlocking myself, I realized the value in creating keys for everyone. And that's my Dharma journey, is creating keys for everyone, for healing, for empowerment, for agency to do whatever, and freedom, just freedom, liberty for everyone, just doing sovereignty, all of it. So, it's so fun.
I love it.
Love it.
Well, Maren, I need to go and have a meeting with Danny here on our fundraising strategy. I kind of want to invite you.
Awesome.
So feel free. I could say to Danny, if you both, I don't know if you have time, but we could just move the meeting in here if you like.
Yeah.
I need to move.
I would love to. I'm going to check in. I had a wonderful a Zoom call that thankfully gracefully was understood that it could be pushed a little bit with Paula and Peter.
Let's find another time.
Oh, cool, totally.
Yeah, I've got to jump on a call about what's going on in the whole psychedelics for trauma arena, and that relates to all of this.
We're going to
I'd be really happy to.
As you go into that, we're going to be doing a psychedelics for health game, and I think it's in like 6 weeks' time.
Yeah, perfect. Yeah, well, we should just keeping both Marin and I abreast of what games are coming up and what it makes sense to join, so that we get a really good.
Well, I'd love. Please consider you both like founding players and help architect this. Please, like, you know, I'll keep kind of writing what I'm seeing, but I know I'm just holding a piece of the elephant, and so trying to design this in such a way that it can be modular for everybody that's holding pieces. But
I do think that there's something to explore further around. You know, I've often thought about the next gen relationship to family wealth and the shame aspects of it, and you know how our main job is to actually break the habits that are no longer serving us, and a lot of those habits are long formed, ancestral, and go way beyond that. So it's like, how do we enable that, and exactly what, you know, Marin's speaking about, and yourself too. I mean, we've all come from, you know, lines of wealth, and things have changed, and it's all interesting that we have both sides of the coin. That's really rare. You know, not everyone has both sides of the coin experience. But how to bring about that freedom from that, and I like this sense of what's their legacy, what's the dharma, and helping them actually. I mean, Nexus does a really amazing job of presenting those opportunities, but there's not the deeper dive that actually you come away from a session, and then it's like, you know, it's like doing anything. You come away from any, you know, therapy session, or you come away from anything that you've taken or whatever, and then it's how do you integrate that? And I think this could become the integration piece for a lot of the work that's already going on. That's how I'm seeing it anyway.
Yeah, no, beautiful, Bobby, beautiful. So I completely agree. Let's continue this, and I'd love to invite you both. Just if you could spend some time thinking about this, of like, if us as a team, our goal is to bring in $30,000 as a backing. Doesn't mean that it'll actually all get used, because a lot of people, I imagine, will be like, oh, I'm up for the experiment. I'm going to keep my stars in the system. And so all we need is to raise backing so that there is sufficient cash flows when people want to exchange stars out, that they can. Just to think about, like, how would we bring that first 30,000 in? And then think like, what's our like way of inviting in, you know, a game for next gen, because I think that's something we could collaborate on, and it will be really interesting to a lot of people.
Absolutely.
So,
And that's actually, that's what I was going to, so with Paula and Peter, their vision has come together, and it's a music festival. It's a peace and thought leadership festival, and it's a music festival in the first implementation in Rishikesh, India.
oh wow, cool. When is it?
It's a portal. It's a much longer conversation. So I'm really interested in how to implement stars, how we can inspire and invite people in through portals of sound and music and art. So
yeah, you're right on our train of thought here.
Co-creating
we are like clearly writing the same, you know, the same Noah Spirit pole position. But we were just saying yesterday that we've got these expeditions that are coming up. So for example, in October, Joshua actually, as a sound healer, he actually goes into the King's Chamber of the Great Pyramids of Egypt. He goes into the King's Chamber. He has permission through his mentor, and goes into the King's Chamber and turns them into giant resonant chambers.
that's what Michael does with Hello.
So
is this through Gino, you and that crew, or is this a separate thing? I've been invited to a number of things.
I know Gino. I don't think Joshua does, but you
right.
should know. But anyway, the reason I say this, and I've got to run, but
yes.
Last thing is, imagine if getting to come to Egypt, you can't buy your way there. You only need to, the only way you can go is spend your gifted stars. And you need to have, it costs $10,000 of gifted stars to attend. We create freaking mind-blowing experiences for people.
Yep. Yep.
where the only way they can go is by being gifted it from their acts of service to the collective. And that, I think, is going to be like, that's going to be epic. And then we get to like come up with what are the most epic planetary scale spectacles and immersive experiences for people that they're like so drawn to, because it is redefining new wealth.
Yes.
That it's just like,
Mhm.
man, that's cool. That's like,
So cool.
Okay,
And
let's do it.
we're gonna have so much fun doing this.
so much fun.
Time.
Love playing
All
with
right, darling.
Lots of love. Lots of love. Thank you both so much.
you so much.
Love you both.
Bye. Bye.
Thank you. Thank